welcome to another edition of It's Elementary. So today I'd like to share with you a book that I read a couple of years ago and just really enjoyed. I think that you will too. And this book is called Ada's Violin, the story of the Recycled Orchestra of Paraguay. Recycled Orchestra, interesting. I think we need to read a little bit more to find more about it. So we want to thank Simon Schuster, the publisher, for allowing us to read this book. And it is Ada's Violin, written by Susan Hood and illustrated by Sally Wern Comport. So let's take a closer look. Ada's Violin. Ada Rios grew up in a town made of trash. Every morning at dawn, Ada heard the first garbage trucks rumble and roll down the road to Katara. Beep, beep, beep. Backing into the landfill, they tipped their loads up and crash. The trash came tumbling down, 1,500 tons each day. Ada and her friends watched as the gancheros, recyclers, scrambled, tearing into plastic bags with long-handled hooks, pushing aside moldy produce, and grabbing anything they could recycle or sell. The going rates? 5 cents for a pound of cardboard, 10 cents for a pound of plastic. This noisy, stinking, sweltering slum was not the most nurturing neighborhood. Ada watched, eyes wide, but she didn't say much. And yet she liked to imagine each garbage truck was a box of surprises. One never knew what might be inside. Her father had found appliances, toys, perfumes, and antique watches. One woman even discovered a small box of gold jewelry. Little did Ada know there was a bigger surprise waiting for her in the landfill. Every day, when Ada's parents went to work, Grandmother Miriam cared for Ada and her little sister, Noelia. Grandma loved to sing rock and roll songs from the 1960s. The girls grew up to the tunes of the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Ada loved to sing too, but only when no one was listening. Ada's dad brightened the night with stories and songs of great musicians. He turned up the radio and pointed out the sounds of each instrument made. Ada heard one above all others. Zing went the strings of the violin. When the girls started school, Grandma returned to work as a recycler, collecting bottles and cans in the city. Classes let out at noon. Young Ada was in charge of Noelia until her parents were done with work. At first, the girls stayed close to home, playing with Grandma Miriam's doggies and making sand cakes in the dirt. Soon they joined their cousins, playing hide and seek or a game of handball in the streets. In time, they ventured farther afield, walking down to the bodega to get candy. But Ada noticed the teenagers hanging out in the alleys, grumbling about life in the landfill looming ahead. What would happen to them? To her? To her little sister? She watched as the older kids turned to gangs and got into fights. One day, when Ada was 11 years old, her grandmother saw a sign posted on the wall of a chapel. Violin, guitar, cello, taught Saturdays at 8 a.m. Fabio Chavez. How Grandma had longed to learn music. Too late for her, maybe, she thought, but not for her granddaughters. She signed them up without asking them, or their parents. Ada's heart sang out. Thanks to her abuela, she could leave her worries behind and learn to play. At the first class, the teacher, Fabio Chavez, had 3 guitars and 2 violins to share. Ada chose a violin right away, but 10 children had signed up. Frustrated, Ada and her friends found that there were not enough instruments to go around. And there was a bigger problem. Everyone quickly realized that the children would need to practice at home, but it wasn't safe to be seen with an expensive instrument in Katara, where a violin is worth more than a house. Watching the children play amid broken glass and rusty metal, Senor Chavez knew he had to do something. He remembered a band called Les Luthers, that made its own instruments. That was it. He asked Nicholas Cola Gomez, a ganchero and carpenter, for help. Senor Gomez found a discarded drum with a big hole in it. What could he use to fix it? He picked through the trash and discovered an old X-ray film. Would that work? It did. Senor Gomez kept experimenting, and others, like Tito Romero, helped. Inventing instruments wasn't easy, but they fiddled around, discovering which materials hit just the right notes. They transformed oil drums into cellos, water pipes into flutes, and packing crates into guitars. Soon there were enough instruments for all of the children who wanted to play. Ada chose a violin made from an old paint can, an aluminum baking tray, a fork, and pieces of wooden crates. Worthless to thieves, it was invaluable to her. It was a violin of her very own. Senor Chavez set up a strict schedule of 3-hour lessons. The class had no classroom, so they played outside, despite the 100-degree heat and sudden downpours. At first, Ada and the others struggled. Sharps and flats clanged and clashed. Playing an instrument is a process. It doesn't matter if one is rich or poor, ugly, fat, thin. You cannot learn to play an instrument overnight, Senor Chavez told the children. Some kids decided it was too much work and gave up, but not Ada. After lessons, she would practice at home, sometimes 2 hours a day. In time, the screeches, twangs, and tweets hit all the right notes. Their class became a small island where Chavez taught them to respect themselves and one another. Be kind. Always say please and thank you. Say you're sorry. Be dedicated when you commit to something, Senor Chavez told the children. Soon, the ragtag crew of kids learned to tune in, to listen to one another, to band together. The Recycled Orchestra was born. From then on, there was something new in the air in Katara. Gancheros trudging home from the landfill might lift their heads to hear the sounds of Ada's violin, or the strains of Bibi's cello, or the strum of Noelia's guitar. A symphony of sound helped to lift them beyond the heat, the stench, and their aching backs. With her violin, Ada could close her eyes and imagine a different life. She could soar on the high, bright, bittersweet notes to a place far away. She could be who she was meant to be. As Ada's skill grew, so did her confidence. Once timid, she now took center stage playing solos. She helped teach the younger children, too. Her teachers and fellow students took note. When she was 12 years old, Ada was named a first violinist. Imagine! She was first at something. Shortly after, she and her 39 fellow musicians were invited to perform concerts in Katara, and later in the nearby capital city of Asunción. Word of this extraordinary orchestra spread. Soon they were asked to perform in other cities and even other countries. Ada and her friends flew on their first airplane, stayed in their first hotel, swam in the bright blue waters of Rio de Janeiro, sampled their first pastries and pineapple, and saw sights they never imagined. The world dazzled them, just as they dazzled the world. When Ada was 16, the orchestra received a very special invitation. They were asked to tour with a world-famous rock band. More than 35,000 people awaited them at their first concert stop in Bogota, Colombia. Ada was more than nervous. She didn't know how to enter or how to greet the audience. She went blank. She saw a giant stage with glaring lights and heard people screaming. But she didn't have to worry. As the Recycled Orchestra took the stage, the people who had paid to see the rock band cheered for them. The enormous audience sang and swayed to the music as the orchestra played, and as their performance came to a close, a crescendo of cheers, chants, and applause resounded across the park. The astonished kids bowed, grinning at one another. They had discovered the surprise waiting in the landfill. Buried in the trash was music, and buried in themselves was something to be proud of.
The end. And look, in the back here, you can find some information about the Recycled Orchestra and a picture of them as well. This is a true story. This actually happened to these kids in this little town in Paraguay. And those kids went on, just like it said in the book, to play all over the world with their recycled instruments. So that inspired me to think about how we could make some recycled instruments with just the stuff that we might have at our houses too. So I want you to go and try to find some recycled stuff. Make sure you check with your grown-up, make sure it's okay to use it, but see what you can find, maybe a water bottle, maybe some cans or some bottles. Let's see what you can find, and then I'm going to show you a couple of ideas on how to get started making your own recycled instruments. Come on back. Welcome back. So I hope you found some great recycled things at your house. Make sure that you ask your grown-up before you use anything though, okay? So I'm gonna give you some ideas of things that you can make instruments with, but this is just a start. You can use your imagination and make instruments out of just about anything in your house. So the easiest thing to do is probably to make a little shaker, right? Your own little maraca. So all you need is a container that has a top and something to put in it. So maybe some beans. Beans are a great idea. Or maybe some rice that's not cooked yet. Anything that's hard and can make some sound. You could even just put some pebbles in there that you can find outside your house. But depending on what you put in there and what size it is, you're going to get different sounds, right? So some rice in a little thing. Make a nice little peck like that. But some beans, that'll make a different sound, right? Very different sounds depending on what you have in there. Actually, ooh, how about a big one? I got a big container here. And we'll put some beans in there. Maybe some rice too. How about we mix it up? That'd be cool, huh? So we'll put some, where's my rice here? There we go. Put some rice in there. Okay, the rice is not coming out very well, is it? All right, and then we put the top on. That is a great shaker. Take them off. Perfect. Okay, so that's simple, easy, right? How about a drum? Let's make a drum. So I have a container here. I've got a can that I've used, and I have made a drum out of it. So you do it like this too. Pretty cool. So this is also super easy. All I need is a container. So I've got another one here. I've got a peanut butter jar here, and I've taken a balloon and just cut the bottom of it off, just so that it's just the top part of the balloon, right? All you're gonna do is stretch it across, and there you go. Perfect, right? Now, if you don't have something that's holding it on there, you might have to use like a rubber band like I used on this one, or maybe even just a little bit of glue to hold that down, or some tape so it doesn't come off. But now I have two very different drum sounds too. Add my shakers and my drums. Ah, brilliant. All right, we got a regular orchestra going on here. All right, one more, and this is the coolest one. I have made this thing right here. This is called a membranophone. A membranophone. I didn't make that up, I promise. Listen to. Uh-oh. All right, we gotta do it right here. Hold on. This one's a little trickier. Beautiful. Did you hear that sound? So what is making that sound? It's the same thing actually that's making the sound of my drums here too. So sound is all about vibration, right? It's sound waves. It's all about vibration. So when I blow into this part up here is vibrating, and the sound has to go somewhere, so it goes down through my tube here at the bottom, and it makes that beautiful noise. All right, try again. Beautiful, beautiful. So let me show you how I made this one. This one's pretty easy too. So all we needed is a water bottle, or any kind of bottle like this. And I cut the bottom off of my water bottle. You're definitely going to need some help with that. Make sure you get a grown-up to help you with that. So I've cut just about here on my water bottle. And then for the top here, I've used something that we have around here an awful lot these days. I've used some gloves, right? So all I did was cut the fingers off like that, and the thumb, and cut down the side of it like that, and then you have one big piece of stretchy material, right? Ooh, with a glove in it. Don't want that part. I'm gonna cut that part too, like that. So I'm just stretched that across the top of my water bottle here on the big end, not on the top, the part where you drink out of, but on the big end. And then I've put this little rubber band to hold it on. The only other thing that you need is a hole. So you need to make a small hole. If you've got a water bottle that's a little bit thinner than this one, you probably can do it with just a hole puncher. I had to use a little bit of like a screw to get this started and then make it a little bit bigger. But that is where my straw is going to go in. So that goes right there. And then at the bottom is just a piece of paper. So I took just a regular piece of construction paper and rolled it up. I'm gonna roll it up pretty tight like that. And you're gonna put that in the bottom, like so. So that needs to go all the way up at the top here. So that needs to touch the top of your instrument here, because that's what's making the vibrations, right? And you wanna make sure that not too much of the air is coming out along the sides of your paper. So that's why I've got my hand down here. I'm kind of blocking that air so that the air has to come out through the bottom of the tube instead. But push that up, and you have a beautiful instrument. And I can change the notes of my instrument too. How do you think I'm going to do that? I can just cut off my paper, and now listen. It's a higher note, isn't it? So you can make a whole thing of these and have all of these different notes and make your own beautiful orchestra. So I hope you've had fun watching today. I hope you use this just as a start for all of the wonderful instruments that you can make. You can make your own beautiful orchestra just like Ada and her friends did. Thanks so much for tuning in to It's Elementary, and be sure to watch Calvert Library's social media feeds for more programs for kids of all ages. Thanks so much. See you soon. Bye-bye.